critical for the continent, Stephen, and we'll give our listeners more update tomorrow as we're doing the countdown for Cairo Decide 2023.
And then the Uganda, obviously, they've got these sanctions against gay and lesbian people. The US is trying to stop giving them aid as a result. Uganda says that the US is pushing an agenda.
This comes from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, from Henry Okello, the state minister from Uganda, saying that it appears that USA is using this LGBT agenda in Africa now to push for these new sanctions against Uganda. Remember, there are sanctions that have been imposed against Uganda, even from AGOA, that come 2024, Uganda will not be benefiting from AGOA anymore. So the Foreign Ministry of Uganda coming out clear, Stephen, that they will not back down on their bill that is before Parliament. We know that America has pushed for this AGOA sanctions against Uganda and Kenya and many other African countries, but Uganda is insisting that there is a political agenda.
And then Mali and Niger, the military governments there, they're denouncing double taxation agreements with France.
Those agreements date back, Stephen. When I look back, Niger, 1965, Mali, 1972. Now, yesterday, the two military governments say that they are now denouncing their ties and they are moving away from these double taxation agreements with France. Others are saying it is never too late, Stephen, because they have seen the script from Ouagadougou when they also did the same by breaking their ties with France on these issues. But France's mom is muted on this move that is coming from Mali as well as Niger.
I mean, many countries have many double taxation agreements. It's just to stop one person being taxed twice in two separate countries. That's all it does.
That is quite true.
In Gabon, the president there, General Brice Nguema, he was in Cameroon.
That was a brief meeting yesterday, actually, Stephen, meeting with Paul Biya. Others are saying he was going to explain maybe the coup of his cousin brother. Why did he take Omar Bongo out of office? It was just, as they call it, a tit with President Paul Biya yesterday afternoon, and he went back to Libreville, coming from Yaoundé. Very important visit, Stephen, even if, like I said, it was a very short-lived visit by General Nguema visiting Paul Biya, who is also, Stephen, others are lamenting he has been in power for too long.
And then in our archives, you're taking us back to this day, 7th of December, 1973.
It's 50 years ago, Stephen, when this activist, a journalist, a member of the African National Congress, exiled in Algiers, a member also of the ANC Youth League. We're talking of Robert Resha, who died on this day in London in 1973. Asante Sana SG, as was still leading the conversation, SAFM.
Ras Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you so much. Of course, back tomorrow.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, that, of course, is the number you've heard from. You heard about the resignation of Mavuso Mzamang from the ANC, being a member of the African National Congress for over 60 years. We'll talk more about that, but your view on that. The HSRC saying that 80% of young people are undecided about whether they'll vote next year. And then the other issue around political violence, what's been happening in Umgeni, the DA chief whip there killed. I think that's an important story, the sort of Daniel Tiga, Israel, Gaza cricket story as well. Lots of things to talk about this morning. Your views on all of these things, of course, on the number, as you know. Other issues coming through as well this morning, and plenty to talk about. It's 20 minutes to 7.
I like to sell it, but want a good price for it. Where can I sell it? I like to sell it. I like to sell it. I'd like
Whoa. You want to sell your car?
Yes.
Okay.
Why do you ask?
Well, because we'd like to buy it. 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 You want to sell it? We want to buy it. We buy cars. The best way to sell your car by far.
Individual brilliance always adds a superb vibe to the team. Sami Sohail of Malawi holds the highest batting average in 2020 internationals. Dhruv Surya of Botswana is the quickest to reach 50 wickets in 2020 internationals, and Francisco Kowana of Mozambique is the first player to score a century and take 5 wickets in the same 2020 internationals. Catch these African stars in action of the BNP Group Africa Cup this December, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The award-winning SAFM playwriting competition is back.
Piece of good news for writers out there.
SAFM invites all writers to explore the medium of sound.
Dr. Jerry Mufokeng Wamaketa is head judge of the competition.
And you ask the question, who? And I want to say everybody, young, old, black, white.
For a chance to win one of 3 large cash prizes. For more information, visit safm.co.za.
SAFM 104 to 107. Nationwide.
We'll talk junior doctors in just a moment. You know the number, of course, 086 000 2032. Lots of issues coming through already this morning, I think partly because of some of the events that are going on and partly because of how we understand these developments playing out, but also issues around Daniel Tiger. I think that's going to be a big story, as I say. There's a big conversation to have around that issue at the moment as well. And then, of course, we're taking a look at the situation around the ANC and how that's developing at the moment. Let's go to Ralph on the line from Boksburg. Ralph, hi, good morning. You want to talk, it says here, about balanced reporting. Is there a particular issue?
Yes, Stephen, there is. Good morning to you and the listeners. Stephen, yesterday I found it ironic. You said we should always be asking questions
Sure.
But those people who question the HIV/AIDS narrative, including highly qualified scientists and Nobel Prize winners, you just label them with the AIDS denialist slur. People questioning the safety and efficacy of the mRNA shots, you label as anti-vaxxers, even though highly qualified scientists were questioning them. Then, those questioning man-made catastrophic climate change story, you call them climate deniers, even though there are tens of thousands of highly qualified scientists, including Nobel Prize winners, who are questioning the whole narrative. By your own admission, you say you know very little about the subject, but you insult and you censor anyone who questions the mainstream story. Why do you refuse to air dissenting views and allow healthy debate?
So Ralph, because when the science comes to a point where we must just accept the facts, and that's why.
Stephen, what do you mean by this science? This science, there's no such thing as this science. Science is always skeptical. Science is always questioning and asking.
Okay, so Ralph, if someone were to phone in and say the Earth is flat, must I give that as much airtime as someone who says the Earth is round?
They're allowed to say it, and
yeah.
you can then.
Yes, but I'm allowed to say that it's wrong.
No, you're allowed to say that you disagree, of course, but You can't say, I'll refuse to put you on because I disagree with you.
I think I can if that mistaken belief is harmful and AIDS denialism is harmful. I think I would have a duty there.
Stephen, you call it AIDS denial, but you don't know anything about this subject.
Okay, well, Ralph, I do know this. Hold on. Before antiretroviral drugs came in, our life expectancy fell to around 48. After antiretroviral drugs came in, about 2 years later, over a period, life expectancy went to 59. I mean, that shows antiretroviral drugs work, right?
That's not true. Those are false figures. Stephen, okay.
Well, now you're refusing to accept facts. I mean, this is the problem.
Why are you shutting me down?
Because you're not accepting facts, Ralph.
No, hang on a minute. Here are the facts. Would you say that Professor Luc Montagnier, who was the person who got the Nobel Prize for discovering the HIV virus, would you say that he's a quack and that he's a denialist? Would you say that?
I would say that his views now have been found on HIV. So I mean, no one can take his Nobel Prize away from him and the work he did there. But the views that he propagates now have been found to not be the case, not be true.
Okay, but there is another narrative, and just because you refuse to listen to it doesn't mean it's untrue. But let's come back to climate change, because that's the thing that you are talking about at the moment. Yesterday, you were praising China because they're doing such a good job. They're building 300 coal-fired power stations. India is building 270. There is no proof that carbon dioxide causes global warming.
Okay.
There's no proof that climate change is caused by it. Do you know the name Hunga Tonga?
I don't know the name Hunga Tonga, but
Okay. It's an undersea volcano that erupted in January last year, spewing 30 billion tons of water and carbon dioxide and all those other things into the stratosphere. That alone is enough to explain our unusual weather over this time. It's not climate change, it's weather variability. Now, why don't I challenge you, sir, just let me say this. I challenge you to nominate, go to Nick Hudson from the Pandemic Organization. Ask him to nominate 2 scientists, credible scientists, to then have a debate with any 2 of your scientists about weather and climate change. You won't do it because you know that they are wrong, and you are pushing a narrative. You are pushing propaganda.
All right, Ralph, I'm going to leave it there. I think we do need to move on, I'm afraid. But I must just say that, when it comes to certain things, I do think that I have a duty to ensure care. And if we're going to have people who say, don't take these drugs which have been found to be safe, I have a duty to push back on that. And that's how it's going to be. And in fact, I have an obligation to, I would suggest, 13 minutes to 7.
Agenda setting conversations of the day.
Yesterday, you heard from the SA Medical Association. They said most junior doctors waiting to complete their community service have still not been told where they're supposed to go to next year. Doctors can't register and practice as a doctor until they've done 1 year's worth of community service. The health department decides which facility they go to. The SA Medical Association says doctors are desperate to know what will happen to them next year. Dr. Lavoyo Bayeni is the Chief Director for Human Resources at the Health Department. Dr. Bayeni, good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners, and thank you for having us on the show, and we really appreciate that you're making time for us to clarify certain issues.
Sure. Where are you in the process of placing these junior doctors?
I can safely report that we have completely placed, especially those that are due for the medical internship, as well as those that are due for the community service, as well as all the other health professions that are supposed to be sitting for community service. And maybe just to also add and clarify to the South African citizens that the process is not only for the doctors, the process is for both doctors as well as all the other health professionals that are due to be sitting for the place for community service.
Dr. Bayeni, I don't want to complicate issues, so let's just focus on one thing. I'm talking specifically about doctors and community service. Have all of them now received their placements?
Yes, we have notified all of them. I can confirm, though, that we have about 202 that we still have not notified of their placement. But what is comforting to us about the 202 that we still have not is that it's what most of them are what we refer to as late starters, which means that they will be starting anytime after the 1st of March. And as a result, we have also communicated to say, because now our priority was to ensure that those who are due to sit on the start on the 1st of January are able to know where they are going. We would rather come back and place those in January.
Sure. Okay. So so there are 202 outstanding. Most of them are late starters. How many have then been placed?
We can gladly report that in terms of our allocation, we have already allocated 9,395 for community service and internship, including those that are belonging to non-medical. Right. But if you're looking at your medical, only medical, we have placed already all those that we're applying, and the number that we're looking at is actually let me just confirm for you. For medical practitioners, we have placed in total now 2,146.
Okay, so 2,106 have been placed and only 200, most of them late starters, haven't been placed. Okay. So sometimes, I mean, it seems to me, Dr. Bayeni, and I was quite surprised in a way that the SA Medical Association was so upset by this, because they clearly believe there are problems. And the process always seems to be delayed. I've done this story so many times as a journalist, I don't know why there's always seems to be a delay in the story. Do you know why? Why is there a delay in placing doctors for community service?
Okay, we can account for the delay that took place for this current placement. Amongst other we were changing a service provider because we are no longer doing this process manually. So we've got a service provider that is doing this. However, the delays were from our side in terms of the shift. And we can confirm that we had tried to make sure that all the associations, including South African Medical Association as well as South African Medical Trade Union, have been kept on board in terms of the development, including us ensuring that when we talk and we do the process, we kept them on board. So we only opened now on the 3rd of October, which we would have wanted to open in September for their application. So we do acknowledge that we did have a month delay. However, when we opened, we already asked them that we would target to release the results on the latest. Initially, it was the 19th of November. And then when we had a challenge, we informed them that we'll target the 30th of November, which we can safely say that we managed to honor.
Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Lavoyo Bayeni is the Chief Director for Human Resources for the Health Department, responding there to the SA Medical Association. 8 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Big crash earlier this morning on the N3 going south through Germiston towards Sprayview. It happened approaching the Grey Avenue exit. Most of the lanes were closed earlier, which backed things up, but authorities have managed to get a couple of lanes open. There are still 2 lanes closed on the right. The right lanes are closed going south into Grey Avenue, but the big impact now is on the northbound side. So coming through from Sprayview with that big volume of traffic, everybody having a look. So just approaching Grey Avenue, it gets slowed there. The run down through Midrand, not looking too bad this morning on the highway. There's a lot of pressure though on the old Joburg Road around the Samrand Road Bridge area. That's north and southbound through that section of Midrand. Crossing Pretoria, the M19 is now closed, going from Durban's Umgeni Road out towards Reservoir Hills, New Germany, and Claremont and Pinetown. The road is closed because of protesting at the Quarry Road estate near the Mountbatten Drive exit to Reservoir Hills. So if you need to get from Durban through to New Germany, you normally use the M19. You won't be able to do that. The N2 south into Spaghetti Junction, and the N3 out through Paradise Valley will be the reroute, although keep in mind that N2 south is backing up because of the roadworks, and probably the extra traffic volume certainly won't help. Queues coming out of Pinetown, the M13 into Paradise Valley. There's roadworks there. A vehicle colliding just before the N3 on the M7 towards Pinetown. So from North Dean, North Park, that stays busy. And Cape Town today, some load shedding around the Elsie's River area. Bishop Lavis also offline, Goodwood and Parow out, as well as Plattercliff and Panorama. All of those areas out until 8 a.m. Looks a bit busy on Jake's Curvell Drive through that Goodwood area, moving slowly into 4 Trekker Road Junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
It's the celebration of the century, and you're invited. We've already given away almost 3 million rand with 56 daily vouchers won. Buy a new Ford before 31 December, and you could win a 50,000 rand voucher or the grand prize of us paying for your new Ford. Visit your nearest Ford dealer today. TNCs apply.
Brighton and Hove Albion are going all out to brighten their clash against Burnley FC with maximum points.
And Dingler again, that was a masterpiece.
However, Burnley FC will display a sense of urgency to move up from the relegation zone.
Dariola has scored! Down the middle! Burnley lead! Shane Rodriguez!
Who will have a great day on the field of play? The Seagulls or the Clarets? This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting clash between Brighton and Hove Albion and Burnley FC on Saturday, 9 December at 4 p.m. live on S3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Beyond the headline on SAFM.
So what sort of interventions should we be seeing?
Crime is usually linked in poorer communities to poverty. Not a direct correlation, but in the absence of having jobs, in the absence of having good income, etc., people tend to get frustrated, and I think some of that frustration, boredom, anger, etc., plays itself out in criminal activities.
Professor Nirmala Gopal, who is a criminologist.
Beyond the headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. Big stories of the day. Hashtag SAFM Sunrise.
5 minutes to 7 the time. Good morning. You'd have heard of all of the problems at NSFAS with funding students over the last few months. Now the organisation which really first uncovered some of the problems at NSFAS, Outer, says another crisis is brewing around student accommodation for next year. They say students will need around 400,000 beds next year. There's only around 25,000 beds in the system. Rudy Heineke is the investigations manager at the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse. Rudy, good morning. How is this supposed to work? What kind of accommodation is the National Student Financial Aid Scheme supposed to provide or help with for students?
Good morning, Stephen. Yes, in 2015, the Department of Higher Education announced, the minimum standards and norms that you must comply with to make your accommodation available for students, and that is the guideline that NSFAS is using, and that is the guideline that they use when they inspect and accredit and certify that this specific accommodation is useful and that students can stay there.
So this huge shortage, why is the shortage so big? Does this normally happen at this time of year?
No, I think this emergency was created because NSFAS didn't, really manage the whole tender that they put out very well. They started off to, create a student accommodation portal where you must register and you must pay to register and you must put your accommodation on there, and then they will appoint a accreditation agent that will come out to your premises, look at the accommodation and certify that it is suitable. And only then it will be available for the students. They can log onto this portal as well, and then they can sign an agreement with the landlord, and that NSFAS will then pay this accommodation. But this process has been lagging, and like you've said in the beginning, there's only about 26,000 beds that has been certified at this stage. And the need was announced by NSFAS, when they put out these tenders, that there's about 397 beds needed just for NSFAS funded students.
Okay, so there's students in the system now. They'll finish, or they'll have finished by the end of the year. So the accommodation they're in, doesn't that become available? In other words, students finish, new students come in?
Well, there's a lot of accommodation available in the market, but it's not to say that NSFAS will pay for that, because NSFAS said that we will only pay when your accommodation or the beds are certified and when it is being inspected by an accreditation agent. So that the problem comes in that it's not unavailability of beds. It is the NSFAS that will say we are not going to pay if you're not certified.
Sure. I mean, it would seem to me if we say end of January is when students need to be accommodated by, there's no way it's all going to be accredited by then.
Yes, I don't believe that, even if they double up and go with double speed with these inspections, they will not nearly reach the number of 400,000. So I think, this crisis, the minister, NSFAS board, the accommodation providers, the universities, TVET colleges, they must really come together now to look at this crisis and to get us a suitable solution.
Rudy Heineke, thank you. Investigations Manager at Outer. We did ask NSFAS to respond to this, to hear their view on it. We haven't heard back from them as yet. Obviously, if they are keen to respond, if they would like to, very happy to hear from them in the next little while here on SAFM Sunrise. All right, lots coming up. After 8 o'clock, we understand, Mavusum Zamang will be available to talk to you about his decision to resign from the ANC. You'll hear from the head of the Hawks, Lieutenant General Godfrey Lebeya, in the next few moments. There's been developments around the Fusion Centre. The other issue, of course, at the moment, infrastructure. Look at what's happening with Transnet, for example. We'll hear from the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Sikhla Zikalala. He's in China asking people there to invest in infrastructure here. We'll ask him why. You with SAFM leading the conversation at 7 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Top stories this hour. Struggle veteran Simang quits the ANC and Lamola criticizes the ICC. Good morning. ANC veteran Mavuso Msimang says the successive failures of the ANC have forced over 4 million people to live in shacks while others back on the streets. This is contained in his strongly worded 4-page resignation letter to the ANC. Msimang has left the party after being a member for more than 60 years. Ndebo Mokobo has more.
Leaving the ANC was not an easy move for Mavuso Msimang.
I personally feel so terribly aggrieved. It's disappointing.
He paints a country of two nations, one rich and the other very poor under the ANC in almost 30 years of its governance. In his letter, he says as ANC leaders proclaim ownership of wealthy homesteads and sending their children to the best schools in the land, there are still many South Africans whose children continue to be exposed to the risk of falling into pit latrines in poorly equipped public schools. He also laments the state of public health care, saying poor people die before ambulances can reach them or perish in the hallways of overflowing under-resourced public hospitals. Ntebo Mokobo for SABC News.
Several EFF MPs were asked to leave the National Assembly's final plenary meeting of the year yesterday for disruptive behavior. The Assembly had been considering the report of Joint Rules Committee on proposed amendments to some chapters of the Joint Rules. The House had been sitting for nearly 8 hours. Chairperson Madala Ntombela explains why he asked some of the MPs to leave the sitting.
Or that a member's conduct is grossly disorderly, as you are doing. He or she may order the member to leave the chamber immediately, and I am requesting you to do that. Honorable Paulson, you have been deliberately disturbing the House. Honorable Sonti, you have been deliberately disturbing the House. Honorable Manyi, you have been doing the same. Could you please leave the House?
The bail application of the University of Fort Hare head of investigation and vetting, Isaac Blakkies, continues today in the Dambaza Magistrates Court in the Eastern Cape, with both the state and defense expected to make closing arguments. In his application, Blakkies denied the 2 counts of premeditated murder and told the court that he can afford 50,000 rand bail. However, the state is opposing bail. State prosecutor advocate Nceba Ntelwa says Blakkies is likely to interfere with witnesses if he is released on bail.
The applicant is not a candidate to be released on bail. He played the role of an overseer in these killings. He portrayed himself as helping investigations, while in fact he was misdirecting it. He sent his photo also to Achuna Banai as one of the victims. He continued arranging this protection while he was talking to the hitman at the same time.
Women traditional healers in Kimberley in the Northern Cape say they now feel unsafe to offer consultations to men after a woman Sangoma was raped allegedly by her male client. It is alleged that the woman went to the man's home to perform a ritual when he accosted her before raping her last month. These healers are calling for justice.
This is now an awareness to a lot of us female practitioners that you need now to be extra careful, especially coming to consultations.
This thing might seem to be a small thing, but it is a big thing. It gave also the impression that how little people, the society or some people think about us as traditional healers.
Environmental Affairs Minister Barbara Creecy says even 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming will result in extreme weather events that will impact lives, food and water security. Creecy says all must adapt to the inevitable impact of climate change. She was officially opening the South African pavilion at the COP28 Climate Summit in Dubai. She says the country joins the world in playing its part in the fight against climate change. And the Justice and Correctional Services Minister, Ronald Lamola, has sharply criticized the International Criminal Court's slow-moving investigation into the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories. Minister Lamola was addressing the 22nd session of the Assembly of States Parties to the Rome Statute of the ICC, currently meeting in New York. The minister lamented the fact that investigations have been pending since Palestine first asked the court to investigate what it called Israeli crimes in the occupied territories, with no clear way forward in sight, and called on the Office of the Prosecutor to investigate without fear or favor. Lamola highlighted the stark differences in the speed of investigations into Ukraine's conflict as opposed to that of Palestine.
We have observed far more speedy progress and indictments from the Ukraine investigation than the investigations into the long outstanding situation in the state of Palestine. Arrest warrants hover above the heads of some, but yet when it comes to the state of Palestine, the arrest warrants seems to be an embodiment of mirage. We are watching the unfolding events daily. Madam President, we must always prioritize truth-telling, even when it works against our interest. This is what integrity demands.
Recapping our top story this hour, struggle stalwart and Deputy President of the ANC Veterans League, Dr. Mavuso Msimang, has resigned from the governing party. I'll be back with the headlines at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, I am Nomalizo Mandela.
Nomalizo, thank you. Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 38462. Now that's good news. Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 38462 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out. This festive season, stash away some cash to shop till you drop. Outsurance is so confident that they can save you money on your car insurance premium that you can ask them for 500 Rand if they can't. That's a monthly saving on your current premium or 500 Rand cash, claim free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Ask for 1,500 Rand instead. SMS out to 38462 for a quote. That's out to 38462. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's apply.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports headlines. Soccer action saw Mamelodi Sundowns ladies defend their Hollywoodbet Super League title. And we also have action from the Chelsea boss. He blamed, the 2-1 defeat against Manchester United on his players being tired. Let's find out more just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. If you're leaving Pretoria, heading north on Eskia and Patlali, just factor in some delays. Approaching Stance Artillery, it's a heavy backlog that extends deep back into the Marabastad area. You might want to just avoid that one. Also, Roger Dyson from the Pretoria West area, very heavy this morning, driving east around towards the R101 junction. N1 getting busy through Midrand. Queues now between the Old Joburg Road and the New Road exit. And we saw yesterday some really heavy traffic coming out of Midrand on Olifantsfontein and on New Road towards the highway. And we're witnessing that again this morning. Durban's M19 closed through Reservoir Hills towards Pinetown. That is protesting at Quarry Road Settlement this morning. So, burning tyres and rocks. In fact, as I just refresh my system, it looks like it may have reopened, but there is certainly some traffic pressure there. M19 going west, probably still worth avoiding, I would think. If you are, just expect to sit on the N2 between Mgena Road and Spaghetti Junction through the roadworks. Cape Town this morning, heavy pressure coming out of Tableview again. Marine Drive to Sunset Beach is slow. Malabongwe to the N7 through Dunoon and Rivergate, and the N7 going south is the heaviest queue on the N7 this morning. Queues down towards the Bosmansdam Road exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7:08, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. In a moment, Lieutenant General Godfrey Lebeer, the head of the Hawks, successors of the Fusion Centre, will look at corruption, look at the investigations into corruption. We'll talk infrastructure with the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Sikla Zikalala, in a moment as well. He's in China. After 8 o'clock, don't forget, Mavuso Msimang, why he's decided to resign from the ANC. All of that to come this morning.
Akwele.
Akwele.
Akweli.
Akwela.
Akwele.
Akwili.
Akwele.
Akwela.
No matter how you say it, one thing's for sure, Akwele has been your trusted natural spring water and delicious flavored sparkling drink for 25 years. Celebrating 25 years of refreshment and joy. Thank you, Mzansi, for your support and making us your favorite water brand. Akwele, spreading joy for 25 years.
Various African outfits will display a great brand of cricket this festive season. Kenya, Ghana and Cameroon will play their hearts out in the East-West qualifier of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. They will all endeavour to clinch one of 4 remaining spots. This is the journey to the finals of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. Witness the thrilling action from 5 to 10 December, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies invites interested individuals and stakeholders to submit written comments on the SABC bill. The bill seeks to repeal the Broadcasting Act of 1999 to regulate the continued existence of the SABC, to provide its governance, to amend the ICASA Act of 2000 and the Electronic Communications Act of 2005. For more information, contact the Portfolio Committee of Communications and Digital Technologies by emailing sabcbill@parliament.gov.za, directed to Hanjiera Sali.
Agenda-setting conversations of the day.
11 after 7, good morning. The Fusion Centre, created by the Anti-Corruption Task Team and the National Priority Committee on Organised Crime, says they've now dealt with 97 cases of public officials accused of corruption or wrongdoing in government departments. 8 of those people have been dismissed, 3 resigned, 8 were suspended. There's still 71 cases pending, though. The centre started by focusing on cases during the pandemic. You'll remember officials accused of corruption relating to the management of funds relating to PPEs and other equipment. The head of the Hawks, which is part of the Fusion Centre, is Lieutenant General Godfrey Lebeya. Lieutenant General Lebeya, good morning to you, sir, and thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning to you and your listeners.
Since the Fusion Centre started, what kind of crimes have you been focusing on?
When we started with the Fusion Centre in May 2020, the focus was on the various crimes relating to COVID-19. That is either fraud, corruption, or tender-related offences, be it a Public Finance Management Act, Municipal Finance Management Act. So that was the focus when we started with the Fusion Centre.
71 of these cases are still pending, and the pandemic ended a while ago. Are you worried that these cases take too long?
Yeah, the cases that are pending at court depend on the court rules. You will understand that there are various matters that are being attended to at court. So when these cases are placed on the court roll, it means that they form part of the queue of those cases that are supposed to be attended to at court. And once a matter is on the court roll, it depends on various parties, be it the accused persons or the state that may at times require postponement to attend to some of the outstanding matters. But usually it is the defense that may be looking for alternative lawyers that may need to come and represent them. But the matters are pending on the roll.
Okay. Lieutenant General, I must ask you, if you don't mind, about a story about an investigator who worked for you, Frans Matipa. He was investigating claims that a unit of the army of the SANDF had kidnapped an Ethiopian national from the Mall of Africa, and he was shot dead. I mean, your investigator, Frans Matipa, was shot dead. We've been told that only someone with military training would have been able to shoot him in a moving car in that way. I mean, this is someone who worked for you. Are you investigating what happened to him?
Let me just confirm that the DPCI is involved in the investigation of the murder of Colonel Matiba. All of the killing of police officials, it is the DPCI that conduct the investigation. For that reason, that is why the investigation of the officer is handled by the DPCI.
Okay, I mean, this is a very serious case and no one will talk about it. Do you believe he was killed by someone he was investigating, by someone in the SANDF?
We don't want to jump into that conclusion, but rest assured that no stone will be left unturned until we know what have happened to this officer.
Okay. One more on this, if you don't mind. The SANDF is holding a briefing on this today in response to this report and others. Do you believe they'll answer questions? Do you believe they must answer questions about this?
I do not want to speak on their behalf, but ours is to focus on the matter that the officer has been killed, and then we would like to find out who have committed that. So we don't want to reach any conclusion as to who shall have done that until the investigation is finalized.
Okay, I realize it's a difficult thing for you to talk about. I must ask, you know how angry and frustrated many people are. We're not seeing many cases being brought against people implicated by the Zondo Commission. Some of these cases are with the NPA. They rely on your investigations. Are you frustrated that all of this is taking so long? We saw the Zondo Commission. I know you can't always use that evidence. You usually can't. But are you frustrated by how long these cases are taking? I think most South Africans are.
No, I think that maybe the statement elsewhere is not correct, that the investigation by the NPA depend on us. Remember that there are two scenarios that we follow. There are those matters that are being investigated by the investigative directorate within the NPA. So we are not in control of those matters. And in fact, when the investigative directorate was established, part of its mandate is to deal with these matters emanating from commissions. And this include the Zondo Commission. What they have not taken over to investigate, the leftovers, those are the matters that we are investigating. And we have already indicated some of the matters that have been placed on the roll. And there are others, indeed, that we are still investigating.
Okay. I think a lot of people look to the Hawks, and I appreciate, and I know what you're correct, of course, about the investigative directorate of the NPA. But I think people look to the Hawks to deal with cases of corruption. And I think there's a sense that, you know, I mean, Mavuso Mzamang puts in his letter to the ANC in a story that doesn't relate to you at all, but says the whole of society sort of become sort of corrupt in some way, in a way. I'm paraphrasing. But the fact is that I think people look to the Hawks to investigate corruption, and I find it amazing that you also don't have the people you need. You've said in Parliament before you don't have the investigators that you need. Your budget, I think, is around 2.2 billion rand, which is not a lot of money. I mean, the VIP protection unit gets nearly 2 billion rand. Do you need more money, more resources to help you with your investigations?
We have indicated that we are operating at the capacity of 53%, which indicate that we still need more human resources. Regarding the capacity, the ability of our members, that there is no doubt that our members are capable of doing their work. You will note that even with the limited capacity that we are having, we have placed more than 11,000 accused persons before the various courts as we speak now. So those individuals did not just volunteer to go to court. We have investigated those matters and we have placed them before the various courts. There are several convictions that we are securing. And if we talk of convictions, our convictions are not less than 80%. So which means that we are not losing these cases at court, and then we have got more cases on the court roll. Indeed, there are still other matters that we are investigating that need to be finalized and a decision be made on them. But rest assured that there is a lot of commitment from the officers in the DPCI.
Lieutenant General Godfrey Lebeer, sir, thank you very much indeed for answering the questions. National Head of the Hawks, 19 minutes after 7.
You see, change happens and it improves our lives. Change is good. It opens doors to new horizons and leads to a more informed tomorrow. Being in the know is no longer for the selected few. Information is for all of us to enjoy, whenever, wherever. Sunday World, putting the latest stories, sports results, exclusive video content and celebrity news at your fingertips. To stay informed, download the Sunday World app today. Available on the App Store and Google Play. Sunday is just the start.
Sikukune United target a win in their own backyard against Stade Malien FC. Meanwhile, the Malian side refused to travel back home empty-handed. This is the CAF Confederation Cup Group D clash. Catch Sekhukhune United versus Stade Malien FC on Sunday 10 December at 8:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
20 minutes after 7, good morning. The Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Sihle Zikalala, says he's asking Chinese companies to invest in our infrastructure, such as the new small harbours that are being developed and pipelines. He's currently in China at the moment on a visit there, but we are actually able to speak to him. The Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure is Sihle Zikalala. Minister, good day to you, and thank you for your time today.
Good day, and thanks for having us in your program.
You want China to invest in our infrastructure. What kind of investments are you looking for?
Well, in this case, China is leading a number of programs that it is running in various countries on infrastructure. We will be meeting with China International Development Cooperation Agency, which have agreed in principle to support us financially with an in-kind grant to conduct feasibility studies for small ports, for small harbours in Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and Northern Cape. So the aim is to consolidate that, but there are other programs that they are running, such as Belt and Road initiatives that seek to support other countries with infrastructure development.
How would you like this to work? So it could work in the form of loans. It could work in the form of Chinese companies coming and building infrastructure, and we pay them to build the infrastructure. They build a small harbour, we pay them 2 billion rand or something. It could also work in a way that they come and deploy equipment, they still own the equipment, and we pay them to use it. How do you think it should work?
It works in a form of PPP, where as government we partner with private sector, both locally and globally. In this case, it might be Chinese company. We build, they operate, and over a period of time, that facility is headed back to government in full. So we are looking on approaches that are toward that kind of intervention.
Okay, I mean, there have been situations, and I think what we're doing here is very different, but there have been situations in other countries where they weren't able to repay China, and then China ended up sort of having some of the infrastructure or owning a port. I mean, there's no chance of that happening here, is there?
No, there shall never be that situation in our case, because we are not going to give concession over particular properties that will be long than expected. And we are aiming to get their investment in areas that will generate income so that they will be paid off and they will get out of that investment with time.
And some of the issues around procurement, black economic empowerment, things like that. Are investors, Chinese companies asking you about that?
Yes, it is always an issue when you go outside South Africa, because a number of people don't understand the black economic empowerment principles. It is important that we explain, but in most cases, once we explain, they tend to understand what we're talking about and understand the background and the purpose of the BEE.
And how have you been received by China? I mean, I think our ambassador to China has suggested perhaps that China was quite upset by the claims that we've made that one of their SOEs, their railway company, the CRRC, owes SARS 3.4 billion rand. You'll know, Minister, I realise that it's not your competence. It's Pravin Gordhan, the Minister of Public Enterprise, who has to deal with this, and Transnet, and the fact that we can't keep those trains running, those locomotives running, because of this dispute. But our ambassador to China suggested, in fact, China was quite upset that we'd essentially accused them of corruption. Has that been a problem at all for you on your trip?
Well, it has been, but not in our case. But it has also not shaped the relationship between the two governments. You will know China and South Africa enjoys a good relationship. Before the BRICS conference, the Chinese president, His Excellency Xi Jinping, conducted a state visit to South Africa, and he met with the president, President Ramaphosa, but they participated also in the BRICS summit and a number of other engagements. So the relationship is quite good. And that incident alone has not affected our relationship.
Minister, you know that infrastructure around the country is sort of falling apart. We need a huge, big national effort to fix it. Is there any sort of plan to do that? And it's public works, government buildings. We know, the problems there. It's water. We were talking about that yesterday. It's roads. All of these have different ministries, but infrastructure is a big issue at the moment. Do you think there's a chance of a big national plan to fix it?
There is a big plan to start with. The government buildings, we have taken a program, we're starting a program of ensuring that we optimize on government buildings. Others were going to lease them to the private sector for various activities. Others, we are renovating and moving government to our own buildings rather than leasing. So we are working to ensure that we roll out infrastructure throughout the country to ensure that we fast track development. Currently, we are building bridges, the Welisizwe bridges that are in 6 provinces of our country. So we are working hard to ensure infrastructure investment.
Minister, thank you so much. Sekhle Zikalala is the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, currently in China. 27 minutes after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Mamelodi Sundowns ladies, well, obviously.
Yes, obviously, they've been crowned champions of the Hollywood Bet Super League for a 3rd consecutive season. Now, they beat TS Galaxy Queens 1-0 at Lucas Moripa Stadium yesterday. That result seeing Sundowns in pole position with 75 points on 28 matches. That's equal in points to the University of Western Cape in 2nd place, who have already wrapped up their campaign, but with an inferior goal difference. This means Sundowns ladies cannot be caught with 2 matches in hand. Now, the other Sundowns team, they recorded a record-extending 10th successive win from the start of the DStv Premiership season. They defeated AmaZulu 1-0 at the King Zwelithini Stadium last night. Sekhukhune United, they move up to 9th. They had a 2-0 victory over Chippa United at Peter Mokaba Stadium. Elsewhere, Aston Villa had a 1-0 win over Manchester City at Villa Park, and Liverpool beating Sheffield United 2-0, while Manchester United had a 2-1 victory over Chelsea. Chelsea boss Mauricio Pochettino admitting the opponents were better.
I think we draw in the first half and 1-1. We had some good chances. I should score and be more clinical. That was the problem. Second half we start well, but then we concede, and of course I think we miss a little bit the energy to be a little bit more aggressive, and we had some chances but not enough to be on the game again.
Soccer news, Carlos Queiroz has parted ways with Qatar's national team less than a year after signing a 4-year contract to coach the Asian champions with little more than a month until the nation hosts the next edition of the Asian Cup. He has been replaced by Spain's Tintin Marquez. Rugby, the Bulls welcome the 3-time European champions, the Saracens of England, to Loftus Versfeld on Saturday for the Champions Cup showdown. The 3-time Super Rugby champions, the Bulls, have never crossed paths with the wolf pack of the Saracens. But here's the Bulls' tight head prop, Morne Smith.
We obviously did our homework on them, so we can expect what's coming, but we don't know if that's going to be the exact game plan, because they haven't also played yet. So yeah, we have. I know it's a 7 o'clock game here, so the heat won't maybe, but we still have altitude.
We'll have more sport on Sunrise with headlines top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. We'll hear from the Democratic Alliance on the murder of their chief whip in Umgeni in the next half hour. Stage 3 now, stage 4 later, 7:30.
And in the headlines, the weekend of the 3rd and 4th of February 2024 has been announced as the second and final registration weekend ahead of next year's general elections. The weekend will allow new voters to register and existing voters to inspect and, if necessary, update their registration details. In other news, ANC veteran Mavuso Msimang says the successive failures of the ANC have forced over 4 million people to live in shacks while others beg on the streets. This is contained in his strongly worded 4-page resignation letter to the ANC. And Environmental Affairs Minister Barbara Creecy says even 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming will result in extreme weather events that will impact lives, food and water security. More details on these and other stories at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A couple of routes around Pretoria to try and avoid this morning. Eskia and Perth Valley Drive, leaving the CBD, heading through towards Starts Artillery. You're going to see some heavy traffic there. Also, Roger Dyson from the industrial side, driving east towards the R101. That's a really big queue, and there are some pressure points now just building on the N14, the Ben Schoeman Highway, up towards Euphius Road. Joburg side this morning, crash at Galuli's, N12 and R24 routes are quite heavily backed up, driving in from the east. Also, some convoying slow traffic through Deepcliff Interchange, and N1 north to the N12 looking rather sluggish. Durban, the M19 appears to have been reopened at Quarry Road after protesting earlier this morning, but there are some delays there along that M19 from the N2 highway down through Quarry Road and then through sort of Westfield towards Dunkeld Road. It all gets quite heavily backed up as well. Jackknife truck at Balgowan on the N3 towards Durban. A little bit earlier, the traffic was quite heavily backed up. Looks like you might be able to get through that now because the big queues have sort of eased on our real-time systems. Cape Town, the N2 inbound, a breakdown near Robert Sobukwe, so coming through from the airport, an extra delay. The N7 south towards Bosmansdam stays busy. Keep in mind there's some load shedding about to hit that whole sort of Montague Gardens, Boertesak area from 8 o'clock until 10. So just as the traffic is starting to ease after rush hour, you'll get some load shedding. So that's likely to be busy for some time. And some pressure around the heart of Epping this morning. N7 north to Viking Way. Viking coming through from load shedding in Elsie's in towards N7, very slow as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Ray Machlaka, welcome back. Asian markets, US markets, how are they looking?
Well, it is markets in Asia Pacific regions that are leading with losses. There is more evidence that China's economy is still struggling. China's exports increased by 0.5% in November. However, exports were still down 6% in the first 11 months of 2023. The global demand for goods produced in China is slowing down, and this is why the world's second largest economy is in the doldrums. In Asian markets, China's Shanghai Composite is down 0.3%. Japan's Nikkei is down 1.8%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng is also down 1.2%. US markets were mostly down yesterday, and before the US market officially opens later today, the futures market is down. Nasdaq, Dow Jones, and S&P futures are each down 0.1%, and our market, the JSE, was up 0.3% yesterday. The shares of mining companies were the biggest gainers.
And then Tongaat, the sugar producer, they might be stopped from holding their business rescue vote.
Yeah, tomorrow, creditors of Tongaat Hewlett are set to vote on a buyer for the sugar company, Mozambican Agriculture and Consumer Group RGS, and a consortium named Vision want to buy Tongaat and its assets. However, the South African Sugar Association and RCL Foods want to interdict the vote by creditors on a buyer for Tongaat. This is because Tongaat has not paid levies worth 1.1 billion rand owed to the sugar industry. These levies are paid by sugar farmers such as Tongaat to the South African Sugar Association to ensure that the sugar industry remains sustainable. The association and RCL Foods say a vote on a buyer for Tongaat cannot move ahead until the levies owed are paid.
And then Lift Airline, they're eyeing business travel growth in 2024.
Yeah, Lift Airline says 2023 has been a year in which leisure travel has recovered from COVID lockdowns. However, business travel has not seen a full recovery. This is because more corporate professionals have embraced virtual meeting platforms for meetings instead of traveling across South Africa. However, Lift says 2024 will overall be a good year for air travel.
Ray Machlakap, thank you. Back tomorrow, more business news through the day here on SAFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Good to hear from you this morning. Moses on the line from Bramley. Moses, hi, good morning.
Happy Thursday, Stephen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. You too. Go for it.
Oh, Stephen, the rate in which people are being murdered in this country, it really shows that we are a mafia state. We are no longer gravitating into a mafia state. We are a lawless country, for that matter, Stephen, whereby people can just be killed for talking truth to power. So I'm asking myself, we inherited this country when everything was like moving smoothly, judiciary were working, everything were working. But since these governments who are defending one another when they are just putting and doing wrong stuff, I think it's time for citizenry to stand up, really going towards our election next year, to vote for people who will be changing things so that we live in a better South Africa.
Yeah, no, Moses, yeah. Look, I don't know if you can say everything was working smoothly in 1994. I don't think it was, but I hear your point.
Yeah, and pick up to Mavuso Msimango, because these guys, when the veterans are saying, you are messing up, when Becky said, you said you are renewing yourself. Yeah. You're renewing yourself from what? They were on top of our senior citizenry.
All right.
So the thing is, no, man. Now Mavuso Msimango has just done what is right. You cannot just go on with people who are looting and they don't listen.
Yeah.
They are just doing their own thing.
All right, Moses.
Yeah.
Moses and Bramley, thank you. We've heard you. I think you're speaking for many people. Not everyone will agree with you, of course. Bajo in Soweto. Bajo, hi. Climate change.
Yes, hi. In fact, I want to even expand my topic today. Stephen, you see, you have a duty of being objective, as you said. You have a duty of
I didn't. No. Not objective. Fair.
No, not fair. Objective.
No. Not objective. Fair.
Okay, fair enough. Let me leave it because I know you cut me off. Okay. In fact, I agree with Ralph. Ralph is correct. You seem to be, in fact, sidelining a dissenting view. I'll make an example, Stephen. In fact, let me not make any example. Stephen, what is clear to me when listening to the show is that you are a lobbyist, Stephen. You are a propagandist and a lobbyist.
A lobbyist for who, Bajo?
A lobbyist for let me make an example for IPP, for renewables. When last have you brought in a coal guy?
Why would I lobby for renewables? What would be in it for me?
I don't know what's your main objective, but when last have you done this? And I'm so glad that the other shows in this presentation are not doing what you're doing. All the other shows are appearing to be objective, not what you're doing. And I hope that SABC sees what you're doing, Stephen. Thank you very much.
Bajo on the line from Soweto. Thank you. A Papillon in Eldos. Papillon, hi, good morning. A butterfly, isn't it, in English?
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm well, Papillon. Go for it.
Yeah, well, wonderful. I just like to comment concerning the story whereby I heard by two different people at Maponya Mall of Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa being in his hometown in Shawelo.
Yeah.
And upon him coming over there, I heard that people were so upset and so violently, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and they were in a way forced out. They forced him out to say, no, they do not want him here, he has done nothing for us. And, I mean, that being his hometown as well.
I don't know if he's been to Shawelo recently, I must say. Not that I know of.
Well, anyway, if you could just get a bit of confirmation concerning South, because what I heard about, you was there around a couple of weeks ago, about him coming there, for generally voting, and the people noticed, and I guess was a bit of an upset over there, that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wonder if you could just give a second opinion. Do you recall some time ago there were stories and whatever of concerning the politicians and the crimes and so forth which were committed then, can I say, from about 2000 onwards? Then I also I request, if possible, if for there to be a radio talk show.
But which crimes are these, Papillion?
Generally concerning politicians, concerning the public, concerning everything, the rapes, the corruption, the murders, blah, 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 all of that, all the crimes generally, whereby I request, if possible, for an hour, once monthly, just to enlighten the public of what's going on with such crimes and so forth, so that we can just be aware of what actually is occurring in South Africa.
All right, no, Papillion, all right, we'll look at that. I've been reminded, actually, yes, and Papillion, thank you. And we found it now. President Ramaphosa was in Shawelo during the voter registration weekend 2 weeks ago. I'd forgotten about that. Sorry about that. The reports suggest some residents were quite happy to see him. Some did jeer him, I understand. I don't think he was chased out in any way that I know of, but he was actually there. Papillion, sorry about that. Mbona in Mahakeng, hi, the ANC.
Yes, good morning.
Go for it.
The ANC is making a mistake by entertaining the apartheid because they are not attending to the real problem. The problem of this country is because it's an eco society. And an eco society is coming because the ANC is not addressing the problem that's supposed to address. That's what is contributing to all these problems that is coming.
Okay, but I mean, it's also about, didn't the inequality start during apartheid, surely?
Yeah, because why? If the ANC attended to the issues of apartheid, we could not sitting with a crime.
Okay, I'm with you. All right. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Mbona and Mahakeng, I'm with you. MJ and Klabecha, hi, you want to respond to Bajo from Soweto?
Good morning, Stephen Albert.
You're right, go for it.
Good, thanks, man. I want to say this guy who said you're a lobbyist, Stephen. I wanted to say that I listen to your show each and every single day, and I believe you are a very talented reporter. But I cannot agree with him anymore. He is right. You are not fair on some of your points, and us as listeners, we do see this. And I was just happy that a guy could call in today and say that, and I just want to call in and support him as well. Thank you very much.
MJ, it's your right to do so. On the line from Klabecha, thank you. Obviously, I'm not a lobbyist for anyone, but it's your right to claim that I am. 17 minutes to 8.
The massive evening to walk on the purple carpet has arrived. The queens of the beautiful game, coaches and administrators are recognized for their excellence on and off the pitch. Celebrating the sheroes of football. Experience the HollywoodBets Super League Awards this Saturday, 9 December at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons right here on SAFM, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide with me, KG Mweketi. Because where words fail, music speaks.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
16 minutes to 8, the time 086 000 2032. That's the number. The DA now saying it'll offer 100,000 rand as a reward for information about the killing of Inhlayenzi Ndlovu, their chief whip in Umgeni. In fact, he's the second DA councillor to be killed there. The DA does control Umgeni at the moment. The KwaZulu-Natal leader of the Democratic Alliance is Francois Rogers. Francois, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
Do you believe the killing of Inhlayenzi Ndlovu is linked to politics? I mean, why would someone want to kill him?
Look, the information we have at hand at the moment, Stephen, it does appear to be politically aligned, but it also appears to be a service delivery issue. So the information we're receiving is a few days ago, we'd had intel that there were certain threats made against Councillor Ndlovu about disconnection of electricity, illegal connections. It's in an area just next to Mpopomeni. It's part of the Ngonyama Trust land, where there's some huge mansions that have been built, and they've just gone ahead and put in their own electrification infrastructure and illegally connected. So that was reported to the police a couple of days ago, and of course there was no action on it, and we know what the result was. He was killed. So, you know, at this stage, with the information I have, that is how I can come to the conclusion that this was behind, that was the...
So, I mean, you have armed men going to his house, shooting him in front of his children. I mean, it's clearly a hit, and I know the police will say they need to investigate, but I can't see any other thing for it. Are you worried there could be more killings like this? I think this is the second in Umgeni now.
It's the first DA councillor that has been assassinated. We've had attempts in other areas like Abaqolusi, but this is the first time there. So, you know, I'm not aware of any other incident that we faced there.
I understand that you met the King of the AmaZulu people yesterday, the EFF did the day before. What was the meeting about? Was it just a sort of courtesy visit ahead of elections?
Stephen, the purpose of our visit was to engage with His Majesty and to discuss various issues. We obviously discussed the Ngonyama Trust matter. We discussed the killings of political leaders and also the Amakosi and Izinduna, and also spoke about, you know, a commercialization strategy for the royal household on agriculture to make the whole process more self-sustainable and self-funding.
So it wouldn't be government that funds the Zulu royal household, is that the idea?
Well, I think what I propose to the king is that we need to set up, you know, formal systems to commercialize the agricultural entity around the royal household, a sort of hand up, as you were. At the moment, it's literally just continually a hand out. And I think if we could make it self-sustainable, it would certainly alleviate, you know, the spending pressures on the province and give the king and the royal household you know, a stronger hold on their own future.
There's a lot going on in KwaZulu-Natal at the moment. There are lots of different polls about how people will do. I think your leader, John Steenhuisen, has suggested that actually, you know, it would be possible perhaps for the DA or the multi-party coalition or whatever we want to call it at the moment to actually win power in KwaZulu-Natal. Do you really believe that that's possible? I mean, it would seem to me that the ANC is still quite strong there, still has a lot of support there, and could form their own coalitions with other parties.
Well, indeed they could, but our polling puts the ANC at below 40% at the moment. And, you know, it puts the IFP and the DA in the possible position of just a two-party coalition. There's a lot of water still to go under the bridge going towards the election, but I think, you know, the fact that we're trying to build relationships with the IFP, we're trying to deal with service delivery issues in the municipalities where we co-govern, we're hoping that sends out a message of hope, you know, in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. And I think our campaign will be targeted around that message, the message of hope, the message of possible change.
Thank you very much indeed. Francois Rogers is the leader of the DA in KwaZulu-Natal.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just a reminder, a couple of hold-ups around Pretoria. Pretoria trying not having a bad And run through the traffic again this morning. We saw pretty light volumes yesterday, and we're seeing that very much again this morning. But there are some delays. Eskia and Pwllheli heading north, interestingly, out of Marabasa towards Stadsaturi. You're going to be asked to queue there. Big backlogs on Roger Dyson from the industrial side, moving east towards the Awadawam. And the N14, the Ben Scrimmon Highway, starting to queue up in to EU Fiat Road as well. Midrand, your approaches to the highway coming out on Olifantsfontein and on New Road remain heavy with some traffic light issues in that area. If you're driving into Joburg, coming in from Lenasia, Protea Glen, you can expect delays on the N12 eastbound around the Golden Highway exit. Now, Durban, this is interesting. The M19 reopened at Quarry Road after some protesting. That was all being held up by a crash near Dunkeld Road, but both of those scenes have cleared. So the M19 between the N2 and Gedde Road interchange and New Germany is fine. A lot of pressure around the Spaghetti Junction interchange this morning. N2 both ways, queuing up. The N3 inbound from Pavilion through to Sherwood, coming through 4 level, looking very heavy as well. Big crash just outside Melalan, if you know where Impala Station is. 2 trucks have collided there. There is some traffic control measures. And Eastern Cape area, the N2 will have a blast today between Makanda and Fish River Pass. It'll be a 3-hour closure, 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. You'll be diverted off the N2 and rerouted along the coastal R72 option. Cape Town, N7 going south. That stays heavy from Plattercliff Road down to Bosmansdam Road. And just a heads up, that whole area, N7, Bosmansdam through to Montague Gardens, going to stay busy for a while longer this morning because from 8 a.m. you've got to 2 hours worth of load shedding moving into that area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Eintracht Frankfurt plans to have things their way when they clash with the giants of German football Bayern München. They believe a win is more exciting on home ground, while the Bavarians are gunning for strictly 3 points to settle at the top of the table. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Catch the superb contest between Eintracht Frankfurt and Bayern München on Saturday 9 December at 3 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The 17th Annual Chief Albert Luthuli Memorial Lecture will be delivered by former University of Cape Town Deputy Vice-Chancellor Professor Thandabantu Nhlapo on Saturday, the 9th of December 2023 at 11:30 a.m. and streamed live on the Luthuli Museum and UKZN Facebook and YouTube platforms. The theme for this year's lecture will be Customary Law and SA Legal System, a role for the courts, the legislature and civil society. The annual Luthuli Memorial Lecture is a partnership event between the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, the Luthuli Museum, the Luthuli Foundation and the University of KwaZulu-Natal. For more information, please contact Zintle Nyembe on 032-559-6824 or email profficer@luthulimuseum.org.za or visit www.luthulimuseum.co.za or contact Pan Adams on adamsp@ukzn.ac.za.
Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends. You need a weekend playlist. It's that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAFM.
Agenda setting conversations of the day.
You know the number 086-000-2032. Well, earlier you heard a conversation with the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse. They suggested that NSFAS has not yet accredited enough accommodation for students next year. They say students need around 400,000 beds. It's just under that. There are only 25,000 beds in the system. We said at the time that if NSFAS, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, were available for a right of reply, we'd be happy to give it to them. Ishmael Mnisi is the spokesperson for NSFAS. Ishmael, good morning.
Stephen, good morning to you and to SAFM listeners.
Is there a problem for student accommodation next year?
Stephen, there's always a shortage of student private accommodation in South Africa. We all know that there are more students now that requires student accommodation, particularly the private ones, because the capacity of our universities and TVET colleges to accommodate all students is still insufficient. However, I must indicate that there is more work that has been done We are not panicking as yet. We are not yet in a crisis as declared by OUTA, and we will, of course, provide the necessary numbers when the time arrives on the beds that we have secured for 2024.
You've got 25,000 beds now. You need another 300, let's call it 350,000 by the end of January next year. That's a huge amount of accreditation that has to happen.
Yes, of course, Stephen. This is the reason why the National Student Financial Aid Scheme is currently working with our TVET colleges and our universities through a pilot project of accrediting private accommodation providers to make sure that they assist the sector in providing these beds that we so much require. Let me indicate that at the moment, there are about 19 TVET colleges that are currently working with NSFAS on the pilot project to accredit accommodation provider, private accommodation providers, and 17 universities are on board to make sure that all these institutions are assisted to quickly accredit private accommodation providers in order for them to meet the norms and standards of as required by the Department of Higher Education and Training.
Okay, once your property is accredited, right? So you get accredited. So let's say by the end of January, all of these places are accredited. Do they then have to get re-accredited for the next year, or is it done?
When you get accredited once, you then get a certificate for you to provide such accommodation. So it's going to be done once, Stephen, because our accreditor is able to go and make assessment of these private accommodation providers and then able to give them the clearance for NSFAS funded students in particular to be able to be accommodated in those residences. But also, Stephen, what we need to indicate is that we are not only looking at private accommodation providers. We still have our universities that are having capacity to accommodate some of these students that we're talking about. Here we are talking only of the shortfall that might happen. And as we are saying, the numbers have increased for accommodation because a number of students now prefer to stay on campus or closer to campus, and it has changed completely from what we used to have in the past 10 years, where majority of students will still stay at home. And now with government funding TVET college students, the demand has become more, because we know that it's only 5 years ago that TVET colleges were part of the funding cohort by NSFAS, and that has on its own increased the number of students who seek accommodation.
Thank you very much indeed. Ishmael Mnisi, right of reply there. We've got both sides of that story now. Spokesperson for the National Student Financial Aid Scheme.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
Aristus on the line from Witbank, Ermelagleni, I should say. Aristus, hi, good morning. Lesotho passports, what's the issue?
Very good morning, and to the SAFM family listeners. Stephen, Lesotho permits, I understand that they have been granted a 2 years extension and the bill.
Yes.
But here is the situation here, which is different. My wife does not fall under that category.
Why not?
We are legally married.
Yeah.
We have applied for a first permit, which you get a temporary permit. They give you the 2 years. Before it expires, you apply for another 2 years. Before it expires, you apply for another one. She has long completed the 5 years in this country. Prior to the expiry of the other permits, we applied for a permanent residence. We've given them all the documentation. It's almost 2 years. Nobody's saying anything.
So you applied almost 2 years ago and you've had no reply?
No reply. But
Sure.
prior to the expiry of the last permit, we went and we applied for the 2 year temporary permit again. They sent us back. They said, no, you've applied for a permanent residence. Wait until the results of the permanent residence.
Sure.
Then I said, hell no. We have children. We can't be traveling to Lesotho every month. We need to have this temporary permit because the Act the Immigration Act also stipulates that if you apply for a permanent resident, your temporary permit must be valid. So then, what if it expires while you are busy with the process? The person who picks up the form and then they look at it, they say this one has expired. We went to Pretoria, we applied.
Okay.
It's been 4 months almost. Nobody's saying anything.
All right.
It's not yet. Every month we drive to Lesotho to go and stamp at the border gate because I wouldn't have my wife staying for 1 day illegal in this country. For how long are we going to have this? For how long are we going to have our children skipping school when we drive to Lesotho?
All right, Erastus, we've heard you, and I'm sorry, I know it's a very important story for you. It's having a huge impact on your life. And this is also the problem when you get involved in parallel processes. You've got different applications at different times, but it's also, and I'd never want to be the Home Affairs Minister, but there's also a sort of question around why all of these permits take so long. I mean, surely an application for permanent residence should be done in a month or two. Shouldn't take longer than that. Erastus, we always have a long list of questions for the Home Affairs Minister. The next time we talk, we'll sort of add it to that and where that's going. And I know there are difficulties there. It's one of the reasons they want to change the system. But Erastus, I'm sorry it's having such a big impact on you. Mavusum Zamang, he's next. You with SFM leading the conversation. It's 8 o'clock. Outrance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 38462. Now that's good news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Top stories this hour. RFA board appears before Parliament and second and final registration weekend announced. Good morning. The Road Accident Fund Board has asked Parliament for a further extension until next year to submit its annual financial statements for 2022 and 2023. The board says this will provide sufficient time to form a technical committee with the Auditor General in an attempt to resolve the issue in the audited statements. Both the AG and the RAF are engaged in a court dispute over the annual report. At the core of the litigation is the new accounting standard used by the RAF. Board Chairperson Thembisile Msibi says the request for the extension will focus on ironing out technical issues.
I was trying to avoid getting into the detail of the matter because the matter is in court regarding the technical issue. But I think what the minister is saying is very important, that the current standard, which is IFRS 4, and it has been replaced, Chairperson, by IFRS 17, covers the accounting treatment for insurers. It is in line with Insurance Act. And the RAF is a social benefit fund that is instituted in terms of the RAF Act. And so currently, those two standards actually, they don't result in a fair presentation of the state of affairs of this social benefit fund.
The weekend of the 3rd and 4th of February 2024 has been announced as the second and final registration weekend ahead of next year's general elections. The weekend will allow new voters to register and existing voters to inspect and, if necessary, update their registration details. The first registration weekend was held on the 18th and 19th of November. The IEC has also announced that South Africans living abroad will have an opportunity to register at South Africa's 120 high commissions, embassies and consulates on the 26th, 27th and 28th of January 2024. The commission will undertake the registration of inmates in the correctional centres between the 30th of January and the 1st of February next year. It says the online voter registration portal remains available until the date of proclamation of the elections. ANC veteran Mavusum Simang says the successive failures of the ANC have forced over 4 million people to live in shacks while others beg on the streets. This is contained in his strongly worded 4-page resignation letter to the ANC. Simang has left the party after being a member for more than 60 years. Debo Mokobo has more.
Leaving the ANC was not an easy move for Mavusum Simang.
I personally feel so terribly aggrieved. It's disappointing.
He paints a country of two nations, one rich and the other very poor under the ANC in almost 30 years of its governance. In his letter, he says as ANC leaders proclaim ownership of wealthy homesteads and sending their children to the best schools in the land, There are still many South Africans whose children continue to be exposed to the risk of falling into pit latrines in poorly equipped public schools. He also laments the state of public health care, saying poor people die before ambulances can reach them or perish in the hallways of overflowing under-resourced public hospitals. Ntebo Mokobo for SABC News.
Accused number one in the case of the theft of US dollars at President Cyril Ramaphosa's Phala farm will today continue with his bail application in the Bela Bela Magistrates Court in Limpopo. Emanuela David started with his bail application yesterday. The investigating officer, Ludi Schnell, is expected to continue testifying. Yesterday, Schnell told the court that David's address cannot be verified. David is facing an additional charge of money laundering. Mahlatse Paladi reports.
The accused, Emanuela David, has told the court that he will not plead guilty to the charges. He has told the court that he has handed over his passport and will not evade trial. The state is, however, opposing his bail. The investigating officer told the court that a day before the Phala farm break-in, the accused allegedly broke into a neighboring farm. Colonel Snell said, although nothing was stolen from that farm, couches in the residence were ripped apart with a knife. Mahlatse Paladin, SABC News, Bela Bela.
Environmental Affairs Minister Barbara Creecy says even 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming will result in extreme weather events that will impact lives, food and water security. Creecy says all must adapt to the inevitable impacts of climate change. Creecy was officially opening the South African pavilion at the COP28 Climate Summit in Dubai. She says the country joins the world in playing its part in the fight against climate change.
South Africa is committed to contributing our best efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions commensurate with the global temperature goal. Hence, we must all adapt to the inevitable impacts of climate change. Accordingly, our country joins the rest of the African continent in advocating for COP28 to deliver a global goal on adaptation with clear targets and indicators.
And the Justice and Correctional Services Minister, Ronald Lamola, has sharply criticized the International Criminal Court's slow-moving investigation into the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories. Minister Lamola was addressing the 22nd session of the Assembly of State Parties to the Rome Statute of the ICC, currently meeting in New York. The minister lamented the fact that investigations have been pending since Palestine first asked the court to investigate what it called Israeli crimes in the occupied territories, with no clear way forward in sight, and called on the Office of the Prosecutor to investigate without fear or favor. Lamola highlighted the stark differences in the speed of investigations into Ukraine's conflict as opposed to that of Palestine.
We have observed far more speedy progress and indictments from the Ukraine investigation than the investigations into the long outstanding situation in the state of Palestine. Arrest warrants hover above the heads of some, but yet when it comes to the state of Palestine, the arrest warrants seems to be an embodiment of mirage. We are watching the unfolding events daily. Madam President, we must always prioritize truth-telling, even when it works against our interest. This is what integrity demands.
Recapping our top story, the Road Accident Fund Board has asked Parliament for a further extension to next year to submit its annual financial statements for 2022 and 2023. I'll be back with the headlines at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, I am Nomalizo Mandela.
Nomalizo, thank you. Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 38462 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out. Is balancing your income statement harder than perfecting a traditional South African potjie? Outsurance has the secret sauce to managing your finances. They're so confident that they can beat your current car insurance premium that you can ask them for 500 Rand if they're more expensive. That's a monthly saving on your current premium or 500 Rand cash. Claim free and with the same insurer for 3 years, ask for 1,500 Rand instead. SMS out to 38462 for a quote. That's out to 38462. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's apply.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, it's rugby news. The English club Bath is set to win the race for Archie Snyman's signature despite interest, and that's from the Stormers. And cricket action yesterday, the second T20I between the Proteas women and the Bangladesh team abandoned after just 8 deliveries. Let's find out more just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very slow in Pretoria. Roger Dyson, if you drive from the industrial side of Pretoria down through towards the R101, that's a very heavy queue. That's trying to get through towards the Ufius Road and the SKM Pathari option out of Pretoria Central from Marabasa, all queued on your way through towards Starts Artillery Junction. Durban still absolutely jam-packed through Spaghetti Junction. N2 coming south from Inanda Road, north from Booth Road Bridge, and the N3 this morning from Paradise Valley through to Sherwood stays heavy. A breakdown between Gateway and Kwamashu, so the N2 south under a bit of pressure. Cape Town has just been a crash blocking most of the lanes on the R300 running north through Brackenfell. That crashed just before the N1, and traffic is parking back through Old Powell and back towards the Bottleray exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
10 after 8, you're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Right, in a moment, we will, of course, speak to Mavuso Mzimang, the person who's published this letter. Well, I don't know if he published it, but the letter of resignation from the ANC after being a member of the African National Congress for over 60 years. We will also talk about soil and your property trends as your mediated conversation this morning. We'll look at what's happening in property and what it tells us about our country and the economy. All of that to come.
Eintracht Frankfurt plans to have things their way when they clash with the giants of German football Bayern München. They believe a win is more exciting on home ground, while the Bavarians are gunning for strictly 3 points to settle at the top of the table. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Catch the superb contest between Eintracht Frankfurt and Bayern München on Saturday 9 December at 3 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The summer season is here. That means there are more reasons for you to travel and explore Mzansi. South African Tourism, together with the greater tourism industry, are partnering to make travel more accessible and affordable. On our Tourism Thursdays feature on Beyond the Headline, we will be joined by SA Tourism to tell us more about how to travel and get to know Mzansi in a fun and affordable manner this summer season. Tourism Thursday is proudly brought to you in association with South African Tourism. First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
12 after 8 now, the time. Well, I think the story of the morning must be the decision by Mavuso Mzimang to resign as a member of the African National Congress after belonging to the organisation, or the movement, for over 60 years. In his letter of resignation, Mzimang says the ANC's own track record in government is a cause of great shame and that corruption pervades our society. He also says the ANC National Executive Committee has shown no urgency in stopping people implicated in corruption at the Zondo Commission from being nominated to office again in Parliament after the election. Well, Mavuso Mzimang has agreed to speak to you this morning. Mr. Mzimang, good morning. I'm sure it's a very busy morning, so thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thanks very much. Easily, this is the most difficult interview, but I'll let you ask.
Why have you decided to resign from the ANC?
Well, it's not something that happened yesterday. Or I've been thinking about my role in the organization, what the organization itself has been doing. You may know that I was part of a team that was asked to put together the Veterans League of the ANC, whose mandate had lapsed because they had not been able to hold elections in time. It was 9 months of very hectic work, which resulted in the setting up of the Veterans League. I honestly didn't think I would be part of that because I do have quite a few things that I'm doing. But with the urging of colleagues, I came in and so on. The function of a veterans league or of veterans or older people in any association or party is that of helping the organization, the leadership in particular, sticks to the values of the organization. It's a mandate that is not legislated. But when people believe that others who have no direct interest either in getting positions or getting businesses or anything and provide counsel, it's taken seriously. It's not been possible. My experience, I'm living very many people who believe that they'll still be able to persuade the leadership to do that. In your introduction, you talk about the Zondo Commission and so on. The truth is that it would be a very difficult decision for the ANC to agree that really to regain its credibility and the trust of the people, it should indicate very clearly to all South Africans that it has no track with corruption. And if they would have taken from the very many ANC members and said, guys, you're not tainted, come in and help the organization, I have no doubt that we would sail across this 50% mark with ease. But as things stand now, we've got to be trying to work out how best to go into a coalition with other people, simply because people will still point to a number of people who ought to be answering questions about their behavior, coming forward and say, vote for the ANC, vote for us. In summary, that's in the end what it is.
So it's about the tipping point for you is that the ANC has not dealt with the people against whom findings were made by the Zondo Commission, and some of them could be back in Parliament next year.
Yeah, well, good luck to them. And if the country wants to do that, I really don't want the Secretary General says the veterans are decampaigning against this thing. It's as long as I was a member of the ANC, I would speak together with others or individually about issues that I thought were important to towards upholding the integrity of the organization. But no, Stephen, associated with corruption would be placing at the service of the people incompetent people, because they're not chosen on merit. You know, that's one of the one of the byproducts of keeping people who are not necessarily your best and getting those who are there and keeping people really that are there because you don't want to disappoint them or you couldn't do much, you know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's an important issue. It has affected service delivery very, very greatly. You know, you think about it at any level, municipalities and so on. The AG comes and talks about audits, and only 38 municipalities out of 257 have clean audits. The majority of those who don't have come from us, and there's something wrong with that. It needs to be remedied, and I think we're taking time to remedy that. I'm speaking for myself, but really, I think we need to understand that I'm but one person, and next week this thing will not be used at all, other than the continuing news about the performance of the ANC. But Mavuso really is not a major factor in these things, believe it or not.
Well, let's see, Mr. Mzimang, let's see. The ANC leadership and President Cyril Ramaphosa, and especially after the first Nasrec conference at the end of 2017, and you will remember you were one of the few people in the ANC who would speak out against the leader of the ANC, Jacob Zuma, then. But President Ramaphosa has promised many times that the ANC is going through a process of renewal. Do you believe the President really wants to renew the ANC?
He must want to, but he also has to take the bold steps, unpopular steps, risky steps to make sure that this renewal is achieved. You will not achieve renewal if you have people who are not really committed to renewal and they're sitting next to you. You don't convince anybody. I don't think he owes his position as president to any individual. I remember when he came into office, he was a lot more popular than the ANC itself. The polls indicated that. I think he really needs to work on that and do the difficult things and make sure that the best people carry out the policies of the ANC. And there's nothing wrong with them. And we're always told that these are good policies, it's just implementation. And that is where the rubber hits the road. You tell people that you are going to improve their lives, a better life for all. And you have to take steps that ensure that you are trying to take them there. I'm sorry.
No. I know this is a difficult moment. If you wouldn't mind, could I ask, are you angry? Are you frustrated? Do I detect disappointment? I suggested when I started the show this morning that perhaps to read your letter, I almost felt I was hearing or seeing or feeling despair. I don't know what word you would choose, so let me stop talking and let you answer. But that you're sort of feeling 60 years in one organization, Mavuso.
Well, I'm glad that we are talking on radio. I don't quite know at this stage of our conversation if I was on TV. I think it would be a little bit embarrassing. It's not easy to hold up. It's painful. It's hard. I ask myself many times. So the answer to your question is huge disappointment that we have not succeeded to get the ANC to do the right thing. It's disappointment. I want to say there are people behind there who are still working very hard at it, but I think I've reached the end of my tether.
I have to ask this, and I know it's difficult for you, but I do have to ask. You say you've come to the realization that your time and energies could be better spent elsewhere. Is there still a political role for you, or is this sort of, the end of politics, do you think? And I mean, politics has defined your life.
I'm 82 years of age. Even in the ANC, I didn't have any formal position until about a year ago when I became the deputy president of the veterans. It was absolute madness for me to either form an organization and want to. I am very interested in the welfare of this country. I really, there are initiatives, for instance, like Vale Musa at a certain time was working on the party political funding thing. And we think it's important that parties are not, funded by people who've got money and they end up doing what. So there is a number of things in terms of the integrity of politics that I would be happy to get myself involved in. Shooting not from the ANC, but as a citizen who is concerned, who can, together with others, contribute towards ethical and good governance in the country, trying to get people to work within the straight and narrow of politics, of good governance. The problem is that when you've got power, you need to have means of controlling it. And I don't think these were adequately developed. It's so easy to do things that you should not do. And also, it's important, focus on President Ramaphosa. Of course, he's the first among equals. But the other people, all of them, were voted by the people in the system of proportional representation. They have a direct responsibility. 86 people or so ought to say, we're not going the right way when we do this. President let's do it like this and so on. But, you know, you get the impression that, well, you don't get the impression. It's not quite happening.
And I don't know if you handed the letter personally to the Secretary General Fikile Mbalula or how that worked. Did they say anything to you when you went through this process?
Yes, you know, unfortunately, I did not. It's personally. I sent an email to his personal official address, but I also sent it to the PA. That's the person who did not even send it to my fellow veterans and so on. Before I knew what was going on, this thing was in all social media, you know. So it would have been nice to have a discussion with the Secretary General. I'm not saying I wanted to be persuaded not to go or anything like that, but maybe this explosion that has happened here that creates overnight film stars and so on would have been avoided, you know. But listen, this is not time for witch hunting. The important thing really is that I do wish our country, I feel very, very bad. You know, sometimes people say you better deal with the devil you know than others. So even casting the ANC in the image of a devil is not a nice thing to say, but it's not doing well. Everybody knows that. But you don't know what will happen after the ANC goes. I think we would make excuses that are indefensible if we took that line of thinking. ANC has to get into the straight and narrow of disciplined, you know, respectable and respectful leadership and do things right. Otherwise, people will cast them out. I hope in the remaining time, some of the things that one raises in the letter will be taken on board, and we have a stable government, and a government consisting of people really where no one keeps on pointing fingers. Team government is really important.
And I can tell from talking to you and from listening to you that this is a very personal decision. Do you think other people are going to follow you? Do you think other people from the ANC are going to leave the party?
I hope they would not do so, and not do so because I'm not going to form a party. It would be madness, you know. So I think a lot of people are continuing to try. They are stronger than me, and I do wish they could succeed, really. Among the veterans, there are some really, really remarkable people. They don't have the public profile that some of us have, but really the salt of the earth type of people who are talking about what kind of list should be developed for the coming elections in provinces, for provinces and for national thing. That, in the immediate term, is what has the potential to save the ANC and keep it in government. If this is ignored, believe you me, the pollsters, all polls, including ones that are done by ANC people themselves, indicate that there is a need to jack up and be more accountable, to improve your credibility, to really deliver this service. You can't every day get up and read about scandals all over the show. You know, I mean, ANC right now is unfortunately, you know, in the news for wrong reasons. I think it can be changed. I hope it can be changed, let me say, but I'm unable to do that.
Mvuso Mzamang, sir, it's been an honor to talk to you over many, many years, so thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks very much.
Mvuso Mzamang, a former member of the African National Congress.
Sekhukhune United target a win in their own backyard against Stade Malien FC. Meanwhile, the Malian side refused to travel back home empty-handed. This is the CAF Confederation Cup Group D clash. Catch Sekhukhune United versus Stade Malien FC on Sunday, 10 December at 8:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies invites interested individuals and stakeholders to submit written comments on their SABC bill. The bill seeks to repeal the Broadcasting Act of 1999 to regulate the continued existence of the SABC, to provide its governance, to amend the ICASA Act of 2000 and the Electronic Communications Act of 2005. For more information, contact the Portfolio Committee of Communications and Digital Technologies by emailing sabcbill@parliament.gov.za, directed to Hanjiera Sali.
I've enjoyed the transition.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
You'll hear Jacques Nabis transition in a moment. Zai Khan, good morning. Archie Snyman.
Yes, he'll be leaving, well, you know, that Irish club Munster. And it's now become apparent that the Stormers were the leading South African team in the race for his services. But ultimately, it's big money, Bath in England, that could turn out to be Archie Snyman's ultimate destination. According to latest reports from UK media, Bath should receive clarity on the 28-year-old's decision, as he could be reprising his working relationship with coach Johan van Graan. Now, other reports suggest the Stormers are the only South African side still in the running for Snyman's signature. Now, the Bulls, they'll kick off preparations for their opening Champions Cup game against the English side Saracens at Loftus on Saturday evening. They currently have a potent mix of youth and experience. Backline player Sebastian de Klerk is learning from the Springboks within the Bull ranks.
I've enjoyed the transition. It's obviously a bit different. The game is faster, playing against internationals every weekend, so you really get a chance to compare yourself to the best, and I think it just helps you to lift your game automatically, and it gives you a lot of time to reflect on things where you thought you were good enough and now see you're not really on par yet.
And finally, cricket. The second T20I between the Proteas ladies and Bangladesh at the Kimberley Oval in Kimberley abandoned after just 8 deliveries due to rain and lightning. South Africa won the toss and elected to field. Laura Wolfart was back to resume her captain duties after her stint with the Adelaide Strikers in the Women's Big Bash League in Australia. We'll have more sport for you on SFM at around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Property, the way it's moving, the way prices are moving, and what that tells us about our economy and interest rates. That's next. You're with SFM leading the conversation just after 8:30.
And in the headlines, the Road Accident Fund Board has asked Parliament for a further extension until next year to submit its annual financial statements for 2022 and 2023. The RAF and the AG are engaged in a court dispute over the annual reports. In other stories, a 47-year-old patient has been admitted to Livingston Hospital in Gqeberha and is in isolation after presenting with symptoms of cholera. Eastern Cape Health authorities say they are on high alert as they await toxicogenicity results from the National Institute for Communicable Diseases. And the weekend of the 3rd and the 4th February 2024 has been announced as the second and final registration weekend ahead of next year's general elections. Details on these and other stories at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretty slow around the Bryanston area and the exits out of Four-Way, so there is some load shedding there for the next couple of hours in the Bryanston area. Winnie Mandela. The highway down through to Bryanston Drive is heavy. The M1 North is queued up, coming from Malabongwe up towards the Four-Ways off-ramp as well. Pretoria side's been really busy this morning, and Roger Dyerston is still jam-packed as you leave the industrial side around towards Eupheus Road. The N14, the Ben Scummon, queuing up towards Eupheus Road, and Esky and Pathlelly leaving Pretoria CBD, being asked to queue up towards Starts Artillery. That queue is stationary back in towards Marabastad. Durban, the protesting on the M19 at Reservoir Hills and the crash out by Dunkeld Road has all been cleared, so the M19 flowing nicely. A lot of pressure into Spaghetti Junction this morning, both sides of the N2, as well as the N3 through the interchange towards Sherwood being held up. And Cape Town crashes on the R300 North at the N1. That's heavy coming up from the Cales River exit through Brackenfell. And there's also been a crash in the CBD Central area, right on the elevated freeway in the foreshore. And that's keeping N1 traffic pressure through from Parow towards City Centre, as well as delaying traffic on the Kuberg Road and Marine Drive options, trying to get into that N1 congestion. question. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Akwele.
Akwele.
Akweli.
Akwela.
Akwele.
Akwili.
Akwele.
Akwela. No matter how you say it, one thing's for sure, Akwele has been your trusted natural spring water and delicious flavored sparkling drink for 25 years. Celebrating 25 years of refreshment and joy. Thank you, Mzansi, for your support and making us your favorite water brand. Akwele, spreading joy for 25 years.
Mamelodi Sundowns and Egyptian outfit Pyramids FC have collected maximum points in their Group A opening matches. They now tackle each other in search of victory. Masandawana want to ensure their visitors walk away without any joy, but Pyramids FC are confident they will upset the 2016 champs. This is the CAF Champions League. Grootgop battles it out with East Cairo. Experience the African flavor of the beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus Pyramids FC on Sunday 10 December at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
25 minutes to 9 the time. Good morning. Glad you're with us this morning. Time for your mediated conversations. One of the ways to judge what's happening in a country, how things are developing, how our economies are changing, is to look at the property market. It's one of the reasons why people talk about property all the time. You can see where people are leaving, where they're going to. You can see if people have money to buy new homes, to buy their first home or to upgrade, or if they're selling their homes because they're no longer able to afford them. You can also have a look and see if people have confidence in the future or where they have confidence in the future. There are many variables to all of this. For example, interest rates play a huge role in house prices and whether people are actually able to afford homes. And there's some evidence that people are battling to maintain their homes at the moment. They can't pay their bonds. In some places, you can also see it's very hard to sell a property. We should also not forget that one of the dominant dynamics in our property market over the last 40, 30 years, there's been huge momentum behind a process that started only in 1990. When people were first able to move from townships into suburbs. So then, what's happening in our property market? What predictions can we make for next year? First this morning, you'll hear from Tim Akanusi, founder and CEO of the organisation Mortgage Market. Then you'll hear from Carlo Mariani, founder of The Property Coach, a property investor who has looked at people investing in property and helped them. And then finally, the chief economist at Econometrics on interest rates, Dr. Azar Jamin. We start then with Tim Akanusi. Tim, good morning and thanks for your time.
Good morning and thanks for listeners.
What movements are you seeing with your clients? What kind of trends can you see in terms of the properties that people are looking for, the properties that people are trying to sell?
Yeah, look, the trend there's nothing that is uniform. I think everything is very sector dependent. So if you look in the more affluent sectors where people are buying homes between 2.5 to about 5 million, there's a great deal of variability there. That market is extremely thin at the moment. So it's an absolute buyer's market. But sellers are certainly not going to get value for their money. So not a great time for them to sell their homes at this point. Of course, in the more affordable housing and first-time home buyer market, that sector has always been quite resilient through the cycle. But, there's a lot more to it in that the economy and property both track each other very closely, and the economy isn't great, and the health of the first-time home buyer, or call it the entry-level market, also is taken a knock from the multiple interest rate hikes that we've had, the impact of inflation and food prices. All of these things have put massive pressure on disposable incomes. So even they are facing a challenge of not just affordability, but also just keeping up with a healthy credit record. So there's not a lot of positive stories out there, except to, remind home buyers that the property game is a long-term one. It goes in cycles. So interest rates are very high at the moment relative to where they've been in the last 2 years, and it's likely to come down at some point in time. So they really just need to play the long game. That would be my message this morning.
I'm glad you're so optimistic about interest rates. We'll speak to an economist in a moment. Are there some signs that some people can't keep up their mortgage payments? They would rather sell their properties and rent, or that people are choosing to rent rather than to buy a first home, so they rent for longer?
Yeah, absolutely. People are diving straight back into the rental market to try to stabilize the monthly cost of living, if I put it that way. What's really happening right now is that everyone is in this wait and see mode, right? There's a wait and see mode when it comes to even the buyers who can afford. They really are trying to find out, are we at the peak of the interest rate hike cycle? And if we are, what does my job security look like? So there's a lot more questions than answers at this stage for buyers. But at the same time as well, this poses an interesting opportunity for investors. You know, if you are an investor that is cash flush, you can certainly pick up properties at like 20 to 30% less of their market value, and you're likely to get good rental yields for these units. But you also have to be concerned about your tenant's ability to keep up with repayments. So there are all these dynamics at play, and there's certainly no easy wins for anyone. But one thing is clear is that property is still very much the key part of the South African economy, and everybody is connected to it one way or another, and we certainly have to fix that alongside the economy as well.
One of the things you see in the Gauteng suburbs is lots of for sale signs. Is it difficult to move those properties? Are they not getting buyers? I mean, if you say that property investors can get them, 30% below market value, that's a huge premium, and that really means that people are losing money when they sell these homes.
Yeah, they are. There's a lot of for sale signs, obviously, showing that there's a lot of people who are looking to change their situation when it comes to the property sector or the homes that they're in. And the reality is that there aren't any buyers. The market has been down more than 30% in the sort of like the core mass market. So there are not even enough people putting in applications to the banks to actually apply for home loans to purchase. And so we've seen a 30% drop in that sector. And at the same time, you are also not seeing people achieve the values that they are expecting in the market. So in some sectors, for example, in the East Rand, if you put your house in the market now for R1 million, you are likely to get anywhere between maybe 850 for it, 900 at its top end. All depends on the condition of your house and how long you're able to put it on the market for without falling into further etc. So it's also very situation dependent, but certainly asking prices are not being achieved, and all these for sale signs eventually will have to sell at lower prices if we're to see an attraction in the market.
Is there regional variability? So that's in Gauteng, the East Rand's a useful example. Is the Western Cape very different? And of course, there's a lot of media talk, but it's hard to sort of gauge of how much movement of people there actually is from Gauteng to Cape Town. And I know during the census, some people crunched the numbers there and suggested across the board, more people were moving to Cape Town now than to Joburg.
Absolutely. There are more people moving to Cape Town. That's this semigration effect. And what's happened there is that those individuals are moving into what you would typically term as like the brand new developments, right? So brand new developments is in vogue because the cost of acquiring those properties is a lot cheaper than buying a property that's already got a buyer in it already. So you're seeing that it is very much the impact of COVID and the impact of work from home has meant that people can have more choice and freedom in terms of where they choose to live and work. And as a result of that, you're seeing pockets of demand in the Western Cape because the economy is a lot more stable there, and there's a lot more positivity around property prices there. So it's a really good investment in the Western Cape. I wouldn't say it is sort of overly traded. I still think that there is more opportunity for first-time home buyers to purchase in the Western Cape and get value for money than if they did so in some of the smaller towns or even in Gauteng as well.
Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate the time. Tim Akanusi is the founder and CEO of Mortgage Market. You're with SFM. It's 16 minutes to 9. The time. Continuing your mediated conversation around property. Carlo Mariani is founder of the organisation The Property Coach, a local property investor. Carlo, good morning. Thanks very much indeed for your time this morning.
Good morning to you and to all your listeners.
I suppose one of the questions is, why are so many people trying to sell properties and why are there so few buyers? Is it just because people don't believe this is a good time to invest in the future?
I think a real critical issue is our focus on short-term versus long-term. And I'd like to quote Bill Gates that says that we are so obsessed with what's going to happen in the next 2 years that we forget what's going to happen in 10 years. And I've been blessed to move to South Africa in 2000. And I clearly remember back then that the conversation wasn't far off what it is now. Property market is too expensive, the country is in a crisis. And back then, the average property price was about 200,000. Now, the same property now would be about 1.3 to 1.4 million. So I don't know many people that bought in 2000 that says, well, I wish I didn't buy a property back in 2000. So that's a key sort of like point of reference. We're so obsessed with what is happening today, tomorrow, next year, and we really forget that property is a multi-generational wealth creation tool, the most proven one beyond what's happening tomorrow.
So if people aren't really able to sell homes and people are leaving, where are they going? I mean, is it just the Western Cape or are they going somewhere else?
Well, I don't have access to detailed data. And, as you indicated, media has to publish a story. So the Gauteng still remains a massive opportunity. We've got mega trends such as mass urbanization. We recently had the release of the census data, and Gauteng continues to be the place where, most people are moving to. So I think it's a very dangerous narrative to say invest in the Western Cape where everything is rosy and sell out of Gauteng because everything is gloomy. You have to be a lot more specific about the micro selection of areas, the type of property you're going to buy, at what price you're going to buy. If you're just going to go on generic hearsay, you might just end up being very disappointed with your investment, even in the Western Cape.
The movement of people from townships to suburbs, and we talk of mega trends, that's probably also been a mega trend over the last period. Is that process still having an impact? I mean, is that over the longer term likely to keep demand for properties in suburbs quite strong?
Again, I think you just have to be specific, but it is definitely a mega trend. Mass urbanization is a key opportunity for the savvy property investor. And what I have been recommending to literally thousands of growing and aspiring property investors is to focus on orderly properties for orderly South Africans. There is a massive unmet demand for those properties. And if you buy now, you're going to be smiling, down the line, 5, 6, 7 years down the line.
When interest rates go up, and they've gone up dramatically in the last 2 years, they were, of course, sort of artificially low during COVID, what impact do you see on house prices from interest rates? How important are they as a factor?
In the short term, they're important. In the medium to long term, they're highly irrelevant. But I want to give a very practical piece of advice to all the listeners, which is to contact your bank and negotiate the interest rate you're paying down. Call them and say, I've been a good payer of my bond for the last 6-12 months, and I now expect a reduction on the interest rate. Just 2 days ago, one of my students did the same thing and got a 0.3% reduction in the interest rate. And on R1 million over the course of 20 years, that's a 48,000 Rand saving simply by placing a call, sending an email. I'm seeing in direct experience massive positive results in negotiating interest rates. So don't just accept interest rates. If you have been paying a bond for a year, go and get that reduction, and you will highly likely get some very positive results.
Carlo Mariani, I'm sure people are taking notes. Thank you very much indeed. Founder of the Property Coach, a property investor. In a moment, interest rates and the outlook. Dr. Azar Jameen's Director and Chief Economist at Econometrics. He's next. It's 11 minutes to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
4 major delays around Pretoria this morning. One is Eskia and Pethani. We've been reminding you about this. Leaving the CBD from Marabastad up to Staats Artillery. There's a heavy backlog of stationary traffic. Roger Dyson out of the industrial side of Pretoria down towards the R101. That stays heavy. Top end of the N14, the Ben Scriven Highway. Queues from Centurion as you line up towards Euphues Road. And the R21 on a bottleneck going north into the Fountain Circle area. There's been a crash before Olifantsfontein on the M1 South. So just as sort of rush hour was starting to ease and clear, that traffic's already backlogging through to Samran. Some load shedding in the Bryanston area. William Mandela coming out of 4 ways across the highway down through towards Bryanston Drive is heavy. And the N1 North got a big queue of traffic from Malabongwe Drive up towards that William Mandela off-ramp. Durban's N2 stays heavy into Spaghetti Junction, southbound coming down from Inanda Road with a broken down vehicle in the mix there as well. The northbound just slow through the interchange up towards the works at the M13. And Cape Town, 2 crashes causing delays at the back end of rush hour. The one is the R300 north at the N1. That's a heavy backlog from the Kales River exit all the way up slowly through Brackenfell towards that. And a crash in the city centre area on the elevated freeway over the foreshore. That means the N1 inbound stays busy from Goodwood Parow as well as Kuberg Road and Marine Drive backlogging to get into that N1 congestion. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
EFC is live this Thursday. 3 incredible title fights in one night. The welterweight strap is on the line as Mark Hume takes on Peace Ngopane. And the most dominant featherweight Iga Cabeza faces the only man he has lost to in 6 years, the Pitbull, Ronaldo Exon. Plus, the finishing machine Humphrey King Cobra Malenga takes on Kaleka Kabanda for the vacant lightweight title. EFC 110, watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Hi, my name is Kutlwana Masote, your host of Weekend Sundowner Classics every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. exclusively on SAFM. Now, this is where you get your best classical music jams on any radio platform. Join me every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between 4 and 7 p.m. Weekend Sundowner Classics.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
Continue your mediated conversation around the property market and house prices. Dr. Azar Jameen is Director and Chief Economist at Econometrics. Dr. Jameen, good morning and thanks for your time.
Morning, Stephen, and to your listeners.
It's one thing for investors to say property is for the long term, it will become more valuable, but interest rates are high now, which is what makes it so difficult to buy. How long do you think they're going to be so high for?
I think the outlook for interest rates is an interesting one. They are in the process of peaking. I think there's very little doubt of that. However, one shouldn't necessarily look for them to fall all that much over the course of the next year or so. And that is because you are seeing governments around the world heavily overborrowed and still trying to prevent economic downturns from being too severe. And that includes our own government. And when the government is squeezing out the private sector the way they are doing all around the world, you will end up with interest rates remaining higher than they would otherwise have been, notwithstanding inflation coming down.
So, I mean, we talk about cycles in economics a lot of the time. Interest rates go up and down. There was a period, think of the 1970s, think in South Africa all the way through really the 1980s until the early 1990s, when interest rates were much higher than they are now. Unimaginable to people of my generation, but interest rates were, I think, at 25%, I think, at one point. They then came down. Is there any reason to believe they would not ever have to go up to that kind of level again?
It all depends on how successful the central bank, in our case the South African Reserve Bank, is in quelling inflationary pressures. Right now we are very fortunate that we've got leadership in the central bank that is determined to prevent such an upward cycle in interest rates. But if you get an irresponsible Reserve Bank in place, if you get governments also, that's the other side of things, deciding, as they are being exhorted to do by certain sections of society, forget about austerity, go out and spend and try and stimulate the economy and don't worry about how much you borrow, then you could go back to interest rates of 20% or more.
As we've seen, I suppose, in Turkey would probably be the classic example of that for the moment.
Well, Zimbabwe is a classic example.
Is there
100%.
Yeah, Dr. Dlamini, a lot of people have this debate around paying for a home, so paying off a bond or renting. It can be a lot cheaper to rent, but you don't end up with an asset. One of our, I think it was Carlo Mariani, said earlier that, nowhere in the history of the world has there been such a sort of powerful thing as home ownership. I know there are arguments against that as well, but different economies have different rates of home ownership, and that must be quite important to an economy. If you own a property, you behave in a particular way. If you rent a property, you may behave in a different way. You may move more often for jobs, for example.
There's no question that is correct. And unfortunately, certainly in Gauteng in the last few years, the premise of, property is the best thing to hold and own and has really gone for a ball of chalk at the moment. As Mr. Mariani suggested, you have 30% declines in, or Mr. Thanusi said, you have had 30% declines in property prices, and people have become poorer as owners, as distinct from renting, where you can probably rent a place now at the same rental that you would have been able to rent it 10 years ago, notwithstanding inflation in the interim. So the cost of rental right now is extremely low. But I think you've got to be very careful. South Africa is a very segmented property situation. Gauteng is down and out. People are leaving. It is really a miserable place for the property market, but the Western Cape is booming. So I think the point has been made, but I think it's been even understated. The discrepancy between the two is unbelievable at the moment.
You're also then going to end up with businesses following people, right? So you end up with an almost unbalanced economy. The centre of our economy is still Gauteng. It may one day be the Western Cape. Durban's economy's had huge problems as well. This has huge fundamental shifts for the way our economy looks and what our economy does. Gauteng centred around mining nowhere near as important as it used to be.
You're absolutely correct. What we're seeing in South Africa at the moment is deindustrialization. Mining and manufacturing are fading. Services and tourism are picking up momentum, and the whole locus of economic activity is shifting massively away from Gauteng towards the Western Cape at the moment. Obviously, politics comes into play here, and you've got a different government in the Western Cape, and that also is enticing people to go to live there right now. Will that last indefinitely? One doesn't know, because the machinations of politics could interfere with that dynamic quite significantly and upset the apple cart. It's a very interesting situation, and there's a lot of uncertainty with regard to forecasting property trends in South Africa right now.
This uncertainty, we see economic uncertainty around the world as well. There have been times of property booms in South Africa. I'm thinking just after 1994, I think in 2004, there was another one that went for several years. What creates a property boom? So low interest rates would be one we've already discussed, but I imagine also a feeling of confidence of the future.
Without a doubt, confidence is a very important factor. And I think what is going to be very interesting, especially in Gauteng, is to see what the general election brings about next year, because this market is so depressed that it can turn on a tiki. And if there is any modicum of renewal of confidence in the outlook, Gauteng property prices could suddenly start shooting up, especially if they go hand in hand with a falling trend of interest rates, which could well materialize through the course of 2024 and 2025.
Dr. Azar Jamin, thank you very much indeed. Director and Chief Economist at Econometrics. My thanks also to Carlo Mariani, founder of The Property Coach, and starting us off today, Tim Akanusi, founder and CEO of Mortgage Market. Well, on that point, we will leave it for today. Kathy is next. We, of course, will see you tomorrow for the Friday edition of SAFM Sunrise. We will, of course, give the ANC right of reply to Mavuso Mzimanga if they are available. I must tell you, though, I'm sure you'll hear the voice of an ANC representative in some way on SAFM long before then, perhaps with Sakina or Eldrin later. From Mdup, Stanza, Zelma, myself, look after yourself. You with SAFM leading the conversation. It's 9 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Top stories this hour. RAF board appears before Parliament and a possible cholera case in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape. Good morning. The Road Accident Fund Board has asked Parliament for a further extension until next year to submit its annual financial statements for 2022 and 2023. The board says this will provide sufficient time to form a technical committee with the Auditor General in an attempt to resolve the issue in the audited statements. Both the AG and the RAF are engaged in a court dispute over the annual report. At the core of the litigation is the new accounting standard used by the RAF. Board Chairperson Thembisile Msibi says the request for the extension will focus on ironing out technical issues.
I was trying to avoid getting into the detail of the matter because the matter is in court regarding the technical issue. But I think what the Minister is saying is very important, that the current standard, which is IFRS 4, and it has been replaced, Chairperson, by IFRS 17, covers the accounting treatment for insurers. It is in line with Insurance Act. And the RAF is a social benefit fund that is instituted in terms of the RAF Act. And so currently, those two standards actually, they don't result in a fair presentation of the state of affairs of this social benefit fund.
A 47-year-old patient has been admitted to Livingston Hospital in Gqeberha and is